Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
Okay, I'm going to call the Monday, October 16, 2017 Selectmen's meeting to order for open session, and we will be moving to executive session. I'm going to make a motion that the board move to executive session under General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3 on three separate matters. Number one, discuss resolution of all turbine litigation. Number two, review status of Lassard versus Town of Falmouth, which is an MCAD case. And number three, to review the status of Wilbur versus Curtis et al. In the U.S. Court of Appeals. Can I have a second?
Do you want to say to not
Oh,
go?
and we're going to return to open session.
Second. Declare not to go into?
And yes, for the reason is that to not go into open session would prejudice the town's position in any of these three matters.
Executive
Thank you.
session.
Second?
And by roll call.
Brown, aye.
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye.
Moran, aye.
Jones, aye.
Great. We will be back.
See you in a half.
Oh, and I was distracted too. The chief wants us to take a quick picture on the way in with the power. everyone. I'm going to call to order again the open session for the Board of Selectmen, Monday, October 16, 2017. We've just returned from executive session, and we have a very special Pledge of Allegiance today, to be led by Cub Scout Weeblo's Den from Pack 43.
41.
Oh, misprint, 41. Thank you.
Griffin, Jeremiah, go ahead.
Scouts salute. Aye.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, all. And I want to thank Selectman Patterson for coordinating this effort and for giving a nice civics lecture at the beginning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you all for
Guys,
coming.
thank you.
Great job.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Pleasure.
Absolutely. Next, we have proclamations. The first one is Michael G. Briggs. Mr. Patterson, do you want to read that one?
It'd be a pleasure. Michael was one of my scouts when I was active as a scouter. Whereas Michael G. Briggs of Boy Scout Troop 40 has successfully completed the qualifications for the rank of Eagle Scout, a rigorous and demanding process that teaches patience, perseverance, and teamwork and requires strong goal setting. And Michael G. Briggs met these challenges with aplomb and shall be recognized as an outstanding representative of his family, his troop, and Falmouth. And whereas the Boy Scouts of America, long acknowledged for building fine citizens, calls for a special court of honor to award its highest symbol of achievement to those who complete this rank, and Michael G. Briggs is now an Eagle Scout with all its rank and privilege. Now therefore, we, Susan L. Moran, Megan English Braga, Doug Jones, Samuel H. Patterson, and Douglas C. Brown, as Selectmen of the Town of Falmouth, do hereby declare and proclaim Saturday, October 28, 2017, is Michael G. Briggs Day. In witness thereof, we have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the Town of Falmouth to be affixed.
My second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Briggs, do you want to come up and just give us a minute at the podium and explain your project? I think it's very important, recognition for veterans in particular.
So my Eagle Scout project was to go around Oak Grove Cemetery in the newer section of it, not like the War of 1812 and the Revolutionary War guys, and clean off the moss and just scrub down some of the veteran stones to make them look nice. Many of them were from World War I and II. Some were Korea, and I believe there was one from the Persian Gulf.
Wow, that's so important to really, recognize history, got an opportunity to learn something, and really honor those veterans who gave their lives. Thank you for that.
I understand you were the leader of a group of as many as 27 young men?
Roughly 27.
That's pretty good leadership. Good job.
Great, and your Court of Honor is coming up?
Yep,
We have the invitation. Thank you very much.
no problem.
Great job.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm really proud for Falmouth that we have so many Eagle Scouts of late. The second one this evening is Noah Lavelle. Mr. Patterson, you want to give someone a shot, or is that one of your scouts?
He's one of my scouts.
Go
also.
for it.
His father, Aaron, is here. I don't see Noah here.
No,
but
he couldn't make it.
yeah, but I ran into him at Staples the other night, so I suspect he's working. But it would be a pleasure for me to read this proclamation. Whereas Noah Lovell of Boy Scout Troop 40 has successfully completed the qualifications for the rank of Eagle Scout, is a rigorous and demanding process that teaches patience, perseverance, and teamwork, and requires strong goal setting. And Noah Lovell, met these challenges with aplomb and shall be recognized as an outstanding representative of his family, his troop, and his community. And the Boy Scouts of America, long acknowledged for building fine citizens, calls for a special court of honor to award its highest symbol of achievement to those who complete this rank. And whereas Noah Lovell is now an Eagle Scout with all its rank and privilege, now therefore we, Susan L. Moran, Megan English Braga, Doug Jones, Samuel H. Patterson, and Douglas C. Brown as selectmen of the town of Falmouth do hereby declare and proclaim this Thursday, October 19th, 2017, as Noah Lovell Day. In witness thereof, we have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the town of Falmouth to be affixed. So please pass on our congratulations.
And all of us up here having children, by the way, we know the parents really stand and support their kids, so terrific for you, sir. And just want to mention before we take that motion that the project was for Barnstable Beekeepers Association building at the Barnstable Fairgrounds. So really important this year for agriculture's health going forward, and great project. So the motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Terrific. And one last thing, that the Code of Honor will begin at 6:30 rather than 7. And next we have Stephen Curtis Jr.
Do you want to read or do you want?
I can.
I mean, I don't mind either if you want, whatever you want to do.
I think I'm actually going to be attending all 3 of these courts of honor, and that is a pleasure, let
hogs
me
them.
assure you. Whereas Stephen Curtis, Jr. of Boy Scout Troop 38 has successfully completed the qualifications for the rank of Eagle Scout, a rigorous and demanding process that teaches patience, perseverance, and teamwork, and requires strong goal setting, and Stephen Curtis Jr. met these challenges with aplomb and shall be recognized as an outstanding representative of his troop, his family, and Falmouth. And whereas Boy Scouts of America, long acknowledged for building fine citizens, calls for the Special Court of Honor to be to award its highest symbol of achievement to those who complete this rank. And whereas Stephen Curtis Jr. is now an Eagle Scout with all its rank and privileges, now therefore, we, Susan L. Moran, Megan English Braga, Douglas Jones, Samuel H. Patterson, and Douglas C. Brown as selectmen of the town of Falmouth do hereby declare and proclaim Sunday, October 29th as Stephen Curtis Jr. Day. In witness thereof, we have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the town of Falmouth to be affixed.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Curtis here? What if you'd come up just for a minute and let us know about your project? Welcome.
I did a garden at the Falmouth Service Center where I grew tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchinis, and donated all the products that was grown to the Falmouth Service Center. And I had the help of family, troops, and parents that wanted to help, and it was a great experience.
Did you taste anything? Congratulations.
That's
Terrific
wonderful.
job.
That's a great thing.
Very good. Eagle
work.
Scout. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I might point out that we actually have a number of supporting scouters here, those adults that support these boys and going up through the ranks and provide all those activities that are needed to really keep them involved and interested. So we have District Commissioner Al Beal in the audience, and also the Troop Scoutmaster from Troop 38, Ed Bruce is here as well. And also, I think, and Stephen Curtis, who is Steve Jr.'s father, is here as well. So just point out and give recognition to all the supporting adults that help put this program together, keep it vital, and help these young men get to this level of achievement. Having done that for 23 years, I can tell you it was personally very rewarding. And it's just nice to see these young men grow and mature and begin to move out into the community and take up leadership positions throughout at Falmouth, but really across the United States. So thank you for all the support that you give to these young men.
So important. Thank you. Next, we have on the agenda recognition, Ms. Braga.
So you're going to have to forgive me because I have to look at my phone for this, but I wanted to recognize, just don't want to get the information wrong, but I wanted to recognize the efforts of our shellfish constable, Chuck Martinson, who has utilized his own personal vacation time to travel to Dominica to really do some hands-on work. So he's working with individuals to fundraise, to also really provision and load a plane with supplies to bring to an island that was ravaged by Hurricane Irma, and then I think hit again maybe by Hurricane Maria, excuse me, there's been so many that it's, but I know he went to school in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and so this is a part of the world that really is important to him, and so he's, doing some hands-on work, not very different from what we're hearing tonight with some of these Eagle Scouts in terms of really, not just talking about it, not just donating, which is lovely, but to be there on the ground to make sure that the work is done in a quality way. So we have some local representation, and so if folks want to support him, he does have a fundraising component of this, so there is information out there. I know some of it's on Facebook and it's in other places, but when he comes back, he's going to specifically be fundraising for a school that the reprovisioning for a school that he is connected with there. So I'm just really proud that this is an individual who has, is really walking the walk and doing some great work. So Falmouth is represented abroad in a wonderful way.
Great job.
And he's already on the way.
Yes.
We've already got the plane and they're loading it, and he just now started the fundraising page, so.
Yes, he started to do it, he just, decided he was going to do it.
I'm guessing that he and his friends, I think there's 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
They must have put up the money and then just hoping that the goodness of people's hearts will reimburse it. But I think they're on the hook for about $15,000 plus their time.
Right.
So that's quite an
Well,
effort.
they saw a need and they just did it.
That's it.
Kind of guys they are. Mr. Jones?
I just want to announce it. The Museums on the Green is sponsoring a speech tomorrow night by William Taubman. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning historian and author of Khrushchev, The Man Is Era. And this will be held tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Mr. Taubman is the Bertrand Snell Professor Emeritus at Amherst College and is speaking as part of an ongoing community service funded in part by the Woods Hole Foundation. The event will be held in the Simon Center for the Arts at Falmouth Academy and is free and open to all at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. It should be a fantastic speech.
Great. Anyone else? Doug?
I attended a great event at the Museums on the Green this week, also a fundraising beer and band festival. It was really great venue. I hope they do some more of those. And also, this week, my class of 77 recently had our 40th reunion, and we had a little money left over from the reunion, and we chose to donate that extra money to a charity. We chose the 1019 Foundation, and I'm sure people are probably aware of it, but just to reiterate, the 1019 Foundation is a Falmouth foundation, started in memory of James Lavin and Owen Higgins, and they have, it's a pretty substantial foundation. Coach Moore is the founder and the treasurer of it. They have $85,000. They plan to operate the fund in perpetuity, and so I'm going to challenge future classes to consider making a donation and challenge everyone. It's the 1019foundation.org. I think it's a great thing for Falmouth. It sponsors scholarships for kids playing football, hockey, or basketball from Falmouth, and also there's an element where they'll help participate kids that don't have any money for the equipment. So it's a good thing.
Terrific.
All right.
Great idea. Congrats.
Thank you.
We next have announcements. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on an item that's not the subject of our agenda today, it's a 2-minute comment period. And as long as there aren't any personal remarks, time is now, if there is anyone. Mr. Dufresne?
A regular comment period.
Yes.
Tonight, Adrian Dufresne, representative of Precinct 2, and I'm here tonight to respectfully request from the Board of Selectmen removing the parking meters. The summer season is over, and Falmouth Heights Ball Field is the only ball field with parking meters, and I've vocalized that, I believe, last year, and you were courteous enough to me that you removed them, and it worked out very nice. There's a lot of young families that use that ball field all winter long for one reason or another. And the other day I was reminded when the guy was picking up the money up there that it was probably time for me to come back and make this kind of a request. Again, I'm going to remind you that it's the only ball field with parking meters. So I would like to ask you, respectfully request during this comment period, that the Board of Selectmen authorize the temporary removal until next spring of the parking meters.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay. Moving on, the first item under summary of actions is a license. It's whether to approve an application for a special one-day wine and malt liquor license for EC Event Management Touch a Truck fundraiser for ALS at the Cape Cod Fairgrounds on Sunday, October 29, 2017. Is the applicant here? Okay, is there any motion by the board?
I move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have whether to approve an application for 3 special one-day wine and malt liquor licenses.
Madam Chair, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Just so if anyone is listening from this event, we just had the reminder from the police department to make sure that they contact the police department right away to line up a detail. I know that this time of year we have a lot of events, and so you really have to call early to make sure you have the appropriate staffing from the police department. So
That's a good reminder, and in fact, I'm sure Mr. Suso, if you could maybe follow up on that if they don't call, that would be great. Thanks. So on to the second one. It's 3 special one-day wine and malt liquor licenses for International Cycling Really Rad Festival of Cyclocross at the Cape Cod Fairgrounds, Friday to Sunday, November 3rd to 5th. Is there an applicant here? Yes, sir? You want to just come up to the podium and just tell us in a sentence or two what the event's about?
It's a bike race on the grounds of the fairgrounds. This is our second year doing the event. The application is for 3 days, but we're actually just doing Saturday and Sunday this year. We abandoned the Friday plan to focus on the main event.
Good to know.
Yep.
Are there any questions of the applicant?
No, I would just say the same thing, that the only feedback that we got from the police department was all the same to make sure that you line up your details as soon as possible.
Is that a new requirement? Last year, nobody had mentioned that. I was just curious about it.
Yeah, it's the police department's input, probably based upon experience from last year, and this board would make the approval subject to that being taken care of.
All right, easy enough.
So would we move approval pending that condition?
Subject to,
And same with the previous one?
correct.
The
Okay.
conditions are actually in the,
Okay, right.
in the
It's
second.
in there. I just like to just make sure that if the applicant's here, you just tell them, because that way it's
Okay.
on their to-do list for,
Okay.
but it's in here.
So once I get that approval, should I just bring that to the office or?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Great.
Good luck.
We're just finishing. Is
Oh,
that a
sorry.
motion?
Yes.
Okay, is there a
Second.
second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
You're good.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Next, we have whether to approve an application for 9 special one-day all-alcohol liquor licenses for the Falmouth Theater Guild Highfield Theater at 58 Highfield Drive for October 27, 28, 29, and November 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, and 12. Is anyone from Highfield here? Great.
Good evening. My name is Brian Bukowski. I'm on the board of directors for the Falmouth Theater Guild, and we are requesting one-day liquor licenses for 9 performances of La Caja Fall, starting at the end of this month through the beginning of November.
Exciting.
I move approval.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just have one question
Doug?
about making sure we're careful about the number of one-day liquor licenses, because there is a restriction that you can only have a certain number, and just as long as you're aware that there
Okay.
is a restriction on how many you can
Per
do.
application or
Per year.
Per year, okay.
And is there, what limits them from having a regular license? I mean, just having not applied, or is there a limit to the number of, just learning curve for me, I'm just curious how that is,
As to
because,
whether they could get what kind of license, an all-alcohol license?
I mean, just to save them, they're in here 3 or 4 times a year at the limit
cost
of
those is
request.
high. We are limited how many we do.
Is that
as to
what it
whether
is?
they would be, what they would be. If they want to be I'm trying to think what the other.
Well, there's a cafe type of license, but you have to serve food with it. That
It's
might not
apples and
be.
oranges.
Yeah, I think that might be too much.
And it can't be.
You probably have to have different insurance if
You
you
can't
do
have a
things like
club
that.
because then it's only for your membership
Right.
and their
I
guests,
see.
and that would not be, they wouldn't be covered by anything else, I think.
So we don't have the particular thing that they probably would want.
Right.
Or
Right.
pay, or they wouldn't want to pay for.
I see, right. Okay, thanks.
Could we just, Mr. Suso, could we follow up on that and just ask, because I wasn't aware of what Mr. Jones is raising, that there was a limit. So maybe just so that we have that information, if there's a
Certainly.
limit per year for an organization, and what that is? Just be good knowledge to
Or is
have.
it maybe a limit per request? Is that?
No, I think it was per year.
Oh,
I just
okay.
remember when the Seacoast Shores group used to come forward, they knew the limit and were very particular about making, say, we have not hit that limit. I think there was one year they asked for a waiver to be granted 3 or
Above that
4 more
limit.
beyond their
Mhm.
limit.
Right.
And so that's
That just
really the
needs
only
to
reason
know.
why I'm even aware that such a limit did exist at one point.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're all set.
All right, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Next, we have whether to approve an application for a special one-day wine and malt liquor license for Woods Hole Public Library with respect to chocolate tasting with wine pairings fundraiser for Sunday, October 22nd. And is there a proponent here? All right, this is
This
a
sounds
no-brainer,
amazing.
right?
I'm gonna have.
Is that a motion, Ms. Broughton?
Yes, move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, sounds like a great fundraiser. Okay, next, under administrative orders, we have vote to accept a donation of disposal services valued at $2,800 from Lawrence Lynch Corp. For the Coonamessett River Restoration Project.
I move approval with gratitude. That's really not a small thing. It's not a small amount of work, so thank you to Lawrence Lynch.
Great participation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next, we have authorization of support for CPC grant application from Highfield Hall.
I
Mr.
just need to disclose that my wife is an employee of Highfield Hall. I don't think there's any conflict of interest here, but I just wanted to disclose that fact.
Thank you. Mr. Suso, do you want to describe this?
Certainly. We received information from Peter Franklin, the Highfield Hall's executive director, that the CPC had requested a affirmation from the Board of Selectmen for an application transmitted for replacement of a wooden floor in Highfield Hall. Since the town is technically remains the owner of Highfield, that authorization, that approval from the board for the application would be required. And so I bring that to the board for that purpose and would so recommend.
And also, I note that this flooring has already been repurposed and resanded, and it's kind of just, seems to be at the end of its life, and it seems that they've really kind of held off, and this is something that is becoming a necessity at this point. So I guess the motion would be to move that the town manager write the requested letter.
Yes, just to authorize the
Authorization.
selectmen's support for the application.
Great, so is there a motion?
I move that we support the application to CPC for replacement of the wood floor at Highfield Hall.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have approvals for special events. The following, I'm going to list all through. These are recurring recommended. The first being the 54th Annual Christmas Parade, Falmouth Chamber of Commerce, Dillingham Ave to Village Green via Main Street for Sunday, December 3rd. Is anyone here from the Chamber? Okay, next is Main Street Stroll. Falmouth Chamber of Commerce and Falmouth Village Association, Main Street to Village Green on Saturday, December 2nd, 2017. Next, we have the Falmouth Road Race, Woods Hole to Falmouth Heights, Sunday, August 19, 2018. I'm sure lots of people want to put that on their calendar. And last, the Striper Fest, Marina Park and Bandshell, Saturday, September 29, 2018. We just finished and we'll be around again next year.
Okay,
Is there a
actually,
motion?
I need
or
to go back to
question?
B.
Okay, we'll hold B.
Okay.
Is there a motion on A, C, and D?
I move approval.
All those in favor?
Aye. Oh,
Great.
second.
Oh, sorry.
Aye.
I second and vote for it.
Great, now on B.
So on B, again, they're requesting the closure of the street on Saturday, September 2nd. And we're already closing the street.
December.
I'm sorry, on December 2nd.
Right.
We're already closing the street on December 3rd for the parade. I don't think the closure of the street has been a part of this activity before.
I agree. Correct.
That's
And
change, correct.
I guess I just wanted to make sure that we're aware of that and that we're voting for that with that knowledge that we wouldn't be closing the street for 2 days in a row.
I think we've run into this issue before and felt like it really was not appropriate, nor was it fair to the businesses on the street, when in fact the people could do that stroll down the sidewalks. without a lot of restriction to their movement. I don't think we're talking about a mammoth crowd here.
I guess,
We can hold this.
Can I just interject? I know this
Sure.
has been discussed with the merchants and the Chamber of Commerce, and the feeling was, I think, in discussion with the police department, that this is only in the evening, of course, and that this would add an element of enhanced public safety by closing down the street, and may even encourage additional participants and foot traffic into this business area compared to we may have had in the past. So it was, public safety had been an element in bringing the application forward, but be happy to bring representative from the chamber or the police to a future meeting to discuss if you'd like.
Because I know for the parade, we close the street and close off parking from much earlier in the day. What would we do about parking from not 4 to 9? I understand from 4 to 9, the street would be closed. Would that be with no cars parked there anymore? Or would their cars be locked in and they can't get out of there?
I think those are all good
My understanding is there'd be
questions,
signage posted, no parking between certain hours. So the cars would move into the off-street lots, for instance, if they wanted to continue to park in the area.
but if I may, I think, part of, unfortunately, part of this is I think, is probably a large public safety component. I think we're just a little bit more aware of public events like this and the, large number of people being on sidewalks and in areas that are then close to roads. So I know that the police chief is actually in favor of closing Main Street. That's what it notes here in the letter. I mean, maybe it would be helpful if we got a little bit more feedback about what it will look like. I mean, if it's really not going to be, it sounds like there may be some more use of the sidewalks for special foods and things like that, which would somewhat push people towards the street a little bit more. It might be helpful to just table it to get some more feedback directly from the chamber, maybe from Chief Dunn, to just be able to ask some questions about, because I agree, I don't think it's a small thing to close off a whole section of road, basically 2 days in a row, but at the same time, if for public safety reasons and for the nature of the event, it's appropriate and the businesses are in favor of it, then I think it's certainly worth considering.
Carolers, costume
Right.
characters, and Santa strolling up and down Main Street. Doug?
If I could, if you can see from the letter that it's endorsed by not only the Chamber of Commerce, but the Village Association, I think most of the businesses down there are aware and involved with the Village Association. They're very strong and very organized. So I think they all know what they're asking for. And it's an evening event, and we're going to be closed the next day. I think it falls right in line. I think it's a good idea.
Because I'm trying to envision, where would the road closure start? Because one of the issues that night is we do have the lighting of the green at 7 o'clock. So certainly it's going to have to be all the way to the Village Green. But is it on both sides of the far end of the Village Green that's closed? Otherwise, if it's not, you're going to have a dead end at St. Barnabas.
Well, there's all that parking on the back, though. I mean, behind the whole store, from Academy Lane, behind Quarterdeck, all the way to Peg Noonan Park. There's all.
I guess I'm less concerned now about the parking. I understand that I think there's enough parking. They can park up at Mullen Hall, or the Mullen School. They can park at Lawrence if they need to. I think losing the parking spaces on Main Street, I'm not worried about. I guess I'm trying to see what's going to actually happen with where does the traffic get stopped. I would imagine it'd be from the Village Green all the way to probably Shore Street Extension.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I second Megan's motion to table.
I think
Yeah.
just because
Bring
I
more
agree. I think
information.
it sounds like a wonderful idea, but just maybe to get a little bit of a better sense of the logistics
Right.
about how it's, because it hasn't happened before.
And it's
Okay.
another opportunity to
plug
publish
it.
that concept.
Okay.
Exactly. So we'll table that one.
Technically, I think we have to postpone it, because tabling would mean we discuss it later tonight.
Okay, so then I
we'll-
move to postpone,
Well, not necessarily.
right,
to our
That's
next
fine.
meeting.
For one,
till
yeah.
next meeting.
Next
Okay.
meeting. And there's a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Next, we have new recommended, which is a wedding ceremony for Thighs at Old Silver Beach, Saturday, November 11, 2017. Any
Move approval.
questions or concerns? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Now, at 7:30, We have a wetland dock hearing, Michael and Brenda Doyle, 318 Acapesket, Green Pond. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board.
I'm going to read the public hearing notice. The Falmouth Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing under Section 240-77 Wetland Regulations of the zoning bylaws of the Town of Falmouth on Monday, October 16, 2017, at 7:30 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, on the application of Michael and Brenda Doyle for permission to construct a pier consisting of 70-foot-long main walkway with a 6-foot by 16-foot L section at its seaward end on the property, located at 318 Acapesket Road in East Falmouth. The area affected is Green Pond. Interested parties may review the file in this hearing at the Selectman's office, and the publication dates were Friday, September 29, and Friday, October 6, 2017, in the Falmouth Enterprise, copies to abutters. Welcome.
Good evening again, Madam Chairman. Michael Borselli. I'm from Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant, Michael and Brenda Doyle. I'm here tonight to seek permission to construct a private recreational pier at 318 Acapesket Road. The property has frontage on Green Pond. It's in the inlet side of the bridge. You can see nearby there's an existing private recreational dock, and there's several just south of the site, 2 lots beyond. And the Doyles engaged our company to investigate the possibilities of having a pier at the property. We did the required survey to measure water depths to ensure there was adequate water depth. We retained the services of Pamela Newbert to do a shellfish survey, and the results of the shellfish survey were that there was no significant densities of shellfish at the property. So we advanced a plan and filed an application with Conservation Commission for this private recreational dock, and the Conservation Commission reviewed the project on 2 different nights, and once they were satisfied, they issued an order of conditions approving the dock. We also, as part of that application process, are required to submit a copy of the plans to the harbor master to verify he has no concerns. He had no concerns with regard to navigation or moorings.
Saw that?
So the pier is a typical pier. You've seen many of these before. Timber, pile supported, with a walkway leading from the upland, elevated over the wetland areas, elevated to allow for public access underneath, extending out, in this case, 64 feet to get to adequate water depth, and then terminating with an L, which is slightly different. Sometimes you see Ts, but we're maintaining a minimum setback of 25 feet from the property line, so a T would have violated that. And the ideal place for the access point for the dock is in this location where the wetland is at its narrowest, so that the bridging of the wetland is minimal, and there's no pilings that are actually penetrating into the wetland. So the length of this dock is such that it certainly doesn't cross more than 25% of the water body, which is a requirement of the Army Corps of Engineers. The pilings are installed. There's a profile. The pilings are installed 17 feet on center to minimize the number of pilings that are driven. The actual walkway surface is that through-flow decking, which allows for sunlight penetration, 50% sunlight penetration through that material. So this is pretty much what you've seen in the past. Conservation Commission approved it. If we receive the special permit, we will proceed to Chapter 91 application. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Doug?
The existing steps that are going through the marshland, are they going to be kept there, or are they going to be removed?
The actual steps that lead down to the marsh were the only access down, and we're actually installing the new dock so that it actually crosses over that. One of the reason that the access to the water was there was to gain access to the water. The dock will now provide that access, so there's no need for those stairs. That being said, though, we're concerned about removing the timbers because it could cause exposed soil and erosion, so we're going to just leave them in place.
That's why my expectation was. And the ones above the deck will probably be left, so they're all going to be left there.
Yeah, and the ones above will still be used to gain access down to the approach to the dock.
In the cross-section, which of those cross-sections would you expect to be the public access to get through?
If you look at this profile, the upland is here, and then it slopes down. And you can see that we designed the approach so that it lands high up on the slope of the bank, so the public access, the 5-foot clearance basically occurs from here to here, so public that may be traversing along the intertidal zone will be able to gain access underneath in these locations.
But only 5 feet?
Minimum of 5 feet from mean high water to the bottom of the stringers.
Okay. Those were my 2 questions.
Anyone else? Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor of this application? Hearing none, is there anyone here who wants to speak against this application?
Move we close the hearing?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Discussion?
I think this is in keeping with the other piers and docks that are in the area, with the shellfish issues being taken care of, and the fact that there are no pilings going into the upper ground, into the marsh area. I feel comfortable with moving forward with it.
And plenty of room to, for other boats, and nothing's tight.
And the conditions on how many boats were allowed, it was in the order of conditions, right? There was only
Yes.
one
Right,
boat?
one boat.
Correct. Yep.
So I would move approval with those findings.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great,
Thank you very much.
Next, we have mooring regulation change hearing. In about 5 minutes. Let me see if there's anything we could take quickly before that.
Sign variance, maybe?
In a minute.
Okay, so request for sign variance we'll take right now, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, 360 Woods Hole Road. Welcome.
Could you pass those back? I think Doug missed
You
that.
could introduce yourself. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and Board of the Selectmen. My name is Anna Farrington. I'm a signage and wayfinding consultant working for Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution.
David Brocher, Facilities Director.
Welcome.
Good evening. We're here seeking a variance to update the existing Quissit Campus Gateway sign. You can see the existing conditions in the photo at the top. We're trying to update the sign to improve legibility along the roadway and also improving the visibility of the street address.
Are there any questions from members of the board?
Just curious, why does it need to be bigger? It's kind of big already.
We really want to increase the visibility of the Woods Hole identity on Woods Hole Road. As you know, traffic on that roadway moves fairly quickly. The scale of the lettering on that sign now is fairly small, and while it's low contrast now, by increasing the contrast of the sign and also slightly increasing the letter size, we're hoping to gain that visibility.
But don't you think that the blue and the white letters are going to show up enough on that existing size?
Well, we also wanted to add the street address, which we thought would be an important add to the sign.
I agree, that's good to have on there, especially when you're having deliveries.
We do get a lot of complaints, people go right by it, they end up down in the village by the time they see anything else.
Yeah.
For us. And unfortunately, the option of making our names smaller isn't on the table.
And you got a good recommendation from the sign review committee.
Yes, we did. They were quite nice about it.
Ms. Braga?
I would just say that I think, as you know, I think I've probably used up 7 of my 9 lives in that area when I used to work in Woods Hole, because it's exactly that. You see people that are, just as they're going past it, realize that's where they want to be. So I think it's, and I know that you've also, that logo has kind of, as you've replaced signs, it's, you know, it's some continuity with other signs that you have on your campus. So I think, I think it's a vast improvement, and I think there are some safety concerns beyond just having a little bit better visibility, so.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a motion?
I'd move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take one more quick one. Request for sign variance off-premise promotional sign for Gosnold National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day. Is there anyone here from Gosnold? Okay.
I would move approval, unless anyone has.
Is there a second?
I'll second that one.
I think it's an
All
important
those in
approval.
favor? Very important endeavor.
Yes,
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. And last, we have a request for a sign variance for our off-premise promotional sign, Waldorf School of Cape Cod, which is located in Katuitt. Is the proponent here? Hi, would you come up? Welcome.
I am Roxanne King from the Waldorf School, and we're requesting to put up 4 different promotional signs for our events this year in 2 different intersections. One is at 151 and the other one is at Old Meeting House Road.
Any questions by the board?
And I believe this is similar, this is the similar locations.
Yeah, the same locations we've done before. I just requested them all at once this time.
And the same sign that we've seen, the same
Different
kind of.
designs, but
yeah.
same size.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with the event. Okay, now we'll head back to our regular agenda regarding mooring regulation change hearing. Welcome, Mr. Frazier. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Greg Fraser, Harbor Master. Back to talk about the mooring regulation changes. We were here some time ago, and you asked that we go through some steps, which were to advertise this hearing, to put the proposed changes, which are very limited in scope, on the website, and solicit some feedback. And I have to say, I think I provided you with the emails of the very few emails that we did get back on them. Most of them were from people that don't have moorings already, that would like to see a very restrictive transfer policy, which is what we have always expected. The people that don't have them want them, and the other side of the coin is if you have them, you want to be able to transfer them. So the compromise that the working group came up with was to tighten up the transfers a little bit, which would change the existing mooring regulations to go to town meeting and ask town meeting to change the fee structure, penalty structure under Chapter 1 for violations of the mooring regulations, which is Chapter 269. And then to move forward with a pilot program to try to use underutilized moorings, or if people don't use their mooring for an entire season, we can reassign somebody off the wait list to those. And then buy and late, volunteer in each harbor, or as many as we can get, to help be eyes and ears for the department and help us with that process. I had a nice meeting with Dan Shearer today. He brought me coffee. Thank you, Dan. And
The enterprise is here, so thank you.
And he and I had a very, very good discussion, I thought. He was a little concerned about the timetable and thinks it's going to take a little bit longer to implement the pilot program than we were hoping to move forward next spring and next summer. So I agree with, in concept, what he's saying is try to get the monitors on board for next summer so that they can assist in the identification of moorings throughout next summer, and then move into the pilot program for 2019.
So One of the reasons that when this issue first came up, the board wanted more study, more public outreach was Mr. Shears attended every meeting. This has long been a concern of many people. Mr. Shear, among others, have stepped up and really done some research and been kind of boots on the ground here. So I wonder if you could just give an overview of the changes that are in store. So there has been public outreach and some publication of this, more than initially.
Yes, the only regulation tonight that we were asking to be changed would be the transfer, and that would include two primary changes. One, we would allow generational transfer up and down, but no lateral transfers, which is the transfer usually with siblings that moves a mooring permit from one family into another family that none of those people have ever waited on the wait list. And it's hard for people who have waited for many, many, many years to see a permit, a new boat show up in the harbor and say, where did this come from? Well, it's extended family and passed on and on and on and down the line or laterally, and those people just never waited. So we're asking that we still be able to go up and down, but not lateral. And then we get a lot of requests for these, so we're also asking that a fee be attached to changing of a mooring. I did not mention that we have submitted a fee request as part of the next month's hearing to add that provision as well.
Okay.
And then the other parts of the plan do not really need any formal approval because we're already allowed under the mooring regulations to do the pilot program. That's allowable. And the volunteers is just something we'll solicit volunteers.
And what was your idea in terms of further publication if the board allows the changes?
Well, if we're going to move ahead with the pilot program, I'm hoping that what we can do is have a initial outreach by mail to the people, whichever harbor. It's a good likelihood it'll probably be West Falmouth because we have a lot of support in that harbor for moving this forward. And then later in the summer, we'd like to have like a public meeting to invite the people that might want information about the pilot program. And, we need to do some convincing that it's not a backhanded way of trying to get the mooring away from people. It's just utilizing ones that aren't being used. And then implement it, get the people on board prior to the mooring billing, which usually happens in January. So have all the people lined up that want to participate in the program, reach out earlier to the people on the wait list so we have a good idea of how many people are going to take advantage of it, and then bill for the normal moorings in that harbor.
Great. Is there any question from members of the board, Doug?
This is a great start, and I hope that it'll be an ongoing process to continue to try to refine and find ways to identify these moorings that may not be used to their fullest. So I hope we see some more of you.
I'm going to allow public comment, 2 minutes per person. Mark?
Mark Finneran, Precinct 6. I'm not quite sure that I heard this correctly. Does this mean that
And Greg, you might want to just stand behind just in case.
Does this mean that the father, so to speak, can hand it down to a son, but not to a daughter because she marries and changes her name? Wouldn't that be discrimination?
No, it means that the son can't give it to his brother. The father could give it to either son or the daughter, but once it's gone to that level, it can't go to a sibling.
Or a cousin.
Well, a cousin I can see, but the siblings, I
It makes parents are going to have to pick which kid they actually really like the best to pass it down to.
And there is a little loophole. There can be one transfer per year, so you could transfer it to the son. The son could then transfer it back to the father, who could then go to the daughter a year later and take 3 years to get that done.
Well, what has happened in the past, quite honestly, is that someone, a real-life example where I got a request to transfer it to, no longer wanted the mooring. They didn't want to give it up in the family. The only person that was available was a sister in Pennsylvania who really didn't want it either, but transferred it to that person. Not 6 months later, that person transferred it again. Now it's in a complete different family, and none of those people waited, basically bypassed everybody that's waited for 10, 15 years. And they didn't really want the mooring, but they didn't want to give it up either. So it's just a way to continuously transfer moorings for people. And, we do recognize that there is this very strong opinion in town for generational transfer, and always has been. This is just a small way to tighten up on it to try to prevent some of that from happening.
See, you've tried to recognize that. Mr. Neto?
Joe Netto, I was a member of the original mooring committee after Hurricane Bob in '92 and attended the meetings of made a couple of the working group with harbor master and assistant administrator, Mr. Starr. I'd just like to point out to the Board of Selectmen, though, that on the pilot program for the moorings, that when I brought up who's going to reimburse the owner of the mooring, and that's a stumbling block. I just want the Board of Selectmen to be aware that the holder of the mooring is going to bear all the cost of the mooring permit, the mooring inspection, and then after your inspection, if your mooring needs, chain replaced, obviously you have to pay, for that. But a stumbling block was figuring out how it could be fair to the mooring owner who pays all the bills, and then someone on the waiting list for 1 year comes in and gets to use that mooring. And to my recollection, we couldn't straighten that out or come up with any answers. So I think if this program goes through, and I would think it would be successful, that somehow we've got to address reimbursement for the mooring owner.
Ms. Braga?
And I just, because I need clarification on this, because I'm not sure, but if the owner doesn't have their boat there for the
Right.
whole year,
Right.
then they could lose that mooring?
No, if you,
No,
there's a lot of misconceptions about this. You have to own a boat and pay the excise tax to the town of Falmouth. That was one of the requirements on the original committee that was in that we, as of July 1st. And because you see a mooring without a boat doesn't mean that the person who has the permit for that mooring doesn't have a boat. You
But
could
they
be
have to have a
trailering.
boat.
You have to have a boat,
Okay.
and you have to pay the excise tax to the town of Falmouth, wherever that boat is, July 1st.
So possibly a benefit is if somebody wants to keep their mooring and
Right.
for whatever reason doesn't have a boat, right?
Well, that's only a 1 year.
Well, what we were hoping to do is to allow the person from the wait list to compensate, actually pay the mooring fee, so that
Right.
it's an incentive for the people that have the permit to actually join the program if they don't have to pay the annual fee. And then I did give you some information about guidelines as to inspections, requiring that even if it's outside the normal 3-year inspection period, we're gonna require that the person coming off the wait list get a new inspection, and then sign a waiver saying that they're not responsible should something happen. The responsibility is gonna be on the person with the boat, not the mooring person that's lending it out.
That's helpful.
And that's
Yeah,
why
I
I thought
missed
the
that
cost-
meeting with Mr. Shearer, and I got there too late today. Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
That makes
Mr.
sense.
Shear, did you have a comment, please?
Hi, Dan Shearer. Thank you for listening. This is the 4th time I've been up here talking about this, and I've got something I do, and I'm going to do it off the top of my head now. I can only say what's happening in one harbor, because I do not go and inspect others. I didn't do my normal yearly survey in West Falmouth this August, because we had some medical problems in the family, and I was lazy. But I was on the committee. I had a great time with Peter. I think he's very good, and I admire his thing. I do feel, however, that our rule in Falmouth is very poor, that if you own a boat, you can keep the mooring as long as you own a boat. Now, that boat can be in Florida, and I'll tell you boats that we do give moorings to that are in Florida and haven't ever seen Massachusetts. And when it's excise tax, very few, many of the boats do not pay an excise tax because you have to be, how many feet clear?
Under 16 doesn't pay?
Yeah.
Or if the value's less than 1,000?
Yeah. So, well, very few boats today are under $1,000 if they have an engine. Or if they haven't.
What would be your suggestion to remedy that particular issue?
I really believe that for somebody who doesn't have a boat should only have a year to remedy that fact. And I went through the mooring list that I got from upstairs, not Greg's, this is the one from our computer room there. I went through that, and I found 41 boats in here I know don't exist.
Well, don't exist in Massachusetts.
Well, don't
at least.
exist in that, well, most of them, they don't exist. I know they don't. Well, they aren't owned by the owner that has them here, but they're still registered as a boat.
So are you advocating that there be an inspection, that the boat be seen on the mooring?
What I said, and I gave to Peter, and I think you all got hands out, that why I want to see this taking more time is that I'd like to have a letter sent out with a return of all the information of the boat they do own, so we know exactly what we're looking at and what we can find in the harbor. That would be what step, mine, number one. And then the next one would be a continual meeting next summer, when this can be talked out and explained. Because, or giving up my mooring to somebody, because I'm going to Colorado and I'm not putting my boat in the water, I'd just as soon pay the $100.
Sure.
And not do it.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing I was thinking is we should have 3 payments. Number one, if you want to give your boat to the harbor master, you pay a small fee. And we'll say $100. The person who's going to use the mooring pays the full fee, or whatever it may be depending on the size of the boat. And also the inspection and so forth.
Thank you. Mr. Frazier, would it be possible, since you're talking about a pilot, period here, would it be possible to implement Mr. Shearer's suggestion in terms of, getting the full information with respect to the boat? Would it be possible to kind of roll that into a second phase? How would you see that working?
Well, quite honestly, I don't really understand where the 41 boats, I wasn't following. All the accounts in our town either have a boat assigned to them, or they're under a 1-year grace period. Anybody can come in and say, we've gotten rid of this boat, and they have a 1-year grace period to give us information on the new boat. And we rely on the state system for state registry boats. It's a little bit more difficult for us to track down out-of-state registration boats because it's just a longer process. Some of them have immediate return, some of them do not.
What percentage of that is it?
It's a small percentage of out-of-state boats. Most of them are in-state boats or the documented boats. Documented boats are very easy to check. That's not a problem. I went back after we talked about this the last time. I went back and went through the mooring list at West Falmouth and sent out probably about 20% of the people in that harbor got a letter from us saying, you either have an out-of-state boat registration, provide us with a copy of that registration, or we were unable to verify the boat through the federal documentation, provide us with that. And almost every single one of them sent the information back to us. So those lists are updated. Do we do that on a continuous basis for every harbor? We do it when we can, yes. But because it was brought to our attention, we were able to go back in and check those. The state registered boats are much easier because we obviously get that live feed through the registry.
So the first point being, when it was brought to your attention by Mr. Scheer in the past, you took action and you've improved the situation.
We just actually sent a letter to every person that had an out-of-state boat registration saying, it's very difficult for us to verify that through all the different state systems, so you provide us with a copy of your registration.
And you got a response?
There were a handful that didn't, and they got a follow-up letter, and they provided us with new boat information. And a lot of those people, quite honestly, if they don't have a boat, we don't prevent someone from coming in and saying, well, I'm in between boats, but can I assign my small outboard or, my John boat or something? Yeah, get it registered and provide that information to us.
Thanks, Ms. Braga.
Well, I was just going to say that I think, this sounds, what you did there and some of the concerns that Mr. Scherer is raising, it sounds like that somewhat might be part of the harbor mooring, monitors. So, as we have a year that goes by where we have monitors in place who are really, they're already going to be probably people who are familiar with those particular harbors, but where that sort of, that constant checking to say, let's follow up on this, there's been no boat there, or the boat looks like it's registered from somewhere, I don't know, that type of piece where you're not just looking for a needle in the haystack, but you're maybe a little bit more targeted in following up with letters to get that information. Because it sounds like you
Yes.
have a system in place to do that. You just did that in West Falmouth, and as we expand this, maybe with the assistance of these monitors, that you can do a little bit more of that.
Absolutely. Having somebody actually in the harbor who can go back more frequently than we're able to do, given the short season that we have, would be very helpful. It's still going to take a little bit longer for the out-of-state boat registration, but with their assistance, we'll be able to do that on a more frequent basis.
Any more questions from the board?
I have a somewhat related question, I hope. Who controls documented boats?
That's federal government, through the U.S. Coast Guard documentation.
And so if there's a concern about a documented vessel, either on a mooring or some other issue, who can we talk to if we feel a documented boat is not abiding by the rules and regulations of the town of Falmouth?
Well, if it's a violation of the mooring rules, it would be us, or if it's a violation, documented boats are still under this 90B, which is the motorboat statute. They still have to adhere to that. So if it's just how it's owned through the federal documentation, we would have to deal with the federal government. But if it's a violation of either the mooring regulations or boating rules, it's covered by state and local.
Noise?
Noise, yeah, noise is a little bit different. Noise, we do have a local bylaw, but that bylaw does need some tweaking because we have had some issues enforcing it at the district court level. So we are hoping to have a committee, a very small working group, to revamp our bylaw that deals directly with that. There is a state statute under 90B that requires mufflers, but the muffler only has to be working, and there's no decibel level in the state statute. We have one that's very low, actually, threshold in the town, but the enforcement part of it's very difficult when it's a federally documented boat because we're limited with the ability to board that.
I guess I'm trying to, then if we can't board it, who can?
Well, the federal government can board it. We can board it for administrative inspections, which is very limited.
Right.
We can also board it for violation of Chapter 90B. But if it's specifically a noise violation, then we would have to do the enforcement without boarding it. And that can be done as well through decibel meters, but we still have to revamp that bylaw so it makes it easier for us to do that, and so that we're more successful at the district court level.
Well, we're talking about documented vessels, and
Exactly.
so an issue came up
I mean,
many
Sound like
times.
a lawyer.
We have had a very bad problem this summer and past summers, and it's the same people that are causing the issues year after year. So we do need to address it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there a motion?
I would move that we change the mooring regulations to allow only transfer to, let's see.
Immediate family?
Well, I would say non-lateral transfers, but only, I guess, up and down the family line.
So it would be as proposed.
Mhm.
Is there a second? Thank you, Doug.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great work. Mr. Frazier,
you.
committee, thank you very much. We'll expect a report back as soon as you have some information.
Well, and next month we'll have a vote on the heat. On the
Exactly.
fees for transferring,
Right.
because that'll be part of our fee regulations.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Next, we have a report from the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. As everyone's probably aware, the board has invited all committees. You just need to contact the town manager's office for a mutually agreeable date. And we have a 15-minute presentation on committee work, anything that the committee wants to raise as important for the community and for the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
No, we can share.
Thank you, Linda.
Welcome, Linda, thank you. Yeah, we'll share, this is great.
We're good sharers. Oh, this is a corrected slide, a corrected. Okay,
Great.
perfect. Thank
And
you.
Madam Chair, if you might introduce anyone in the audience from the committee?
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us here tonight. I am Linda Davis. I'm chair of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and I work with 6 other people in dealing with trash and waste-related issues in town. Thank you to the Selectmen, town manager, assistant town manager. I also want to recognize Mr. McConerty, who is the deputy director of the DPW and takes on some of the responsibilities of waste and trash in this town. And also Mr. Grady, who is the superintendent of the highway department. He too has some responsibilities. And Mr. Jack, who is not here, he also is part of the team, so to speak. I do want to mention just very briefly that the people I work with are John Snyder, who's vice chairman, Chris Poloni, who is our secretary, Virginia Gregg, William Peck, Mark Finneran, Alan Robinson, and Ruth Brazier, who is not on our committee because of term limits, but continues to be our #1 chief volunteer. And so thank you to all of them. And it's a great group. We even have meetings twice a month, and they show up. So thank you. Okay, mission statement. Take a look at this very briefly. First of all, people, when I tell people I'm on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, a lot of people think solid waste has to do with human waste and related to those kind of septic issues. And I have to clarify that solid waste is something else. And solid waste really is a byproduct of human activity and human behavior. I mean, it encompasses everything, not just what we eat, but what we do, what we play with, what we work with, how we build our houses, what's left over. Whatever is left over is considered waste, and it comes in a variety of forms. So we're concerned about that. And we try to make recommendations to the town on how to deal with all of that waste. Particularly in this day and age, we're looking at how we can reuse and repurpose and recycle what we have. We know that a lot of our resources are finite and limited. Some of the areas of our concern are organics, yard food waste, household hazardous waste, toxic materials, of course, what we know is ordinary trash. And we seek, very important, underlying all this is we seek compliance with the state on waste bans. The state has regulations in place that tell us how to do our waste. And we need to always look to see that we are in compliance with that. Of course, we're looking to educate and network with our Falmouth citizenry about what is important, what they need to do. And then we also recommend strategies, interdepartmental strategies in dealing with waste management. Next slide. Okay, now, where's our focus? What are some of the things that we're concerned with? Well, you can see that waste isn't just something you put by the curbside and it goes away, that it is a more involved system, really, and it has many assets to it. Some of the things that we're concerned about in making some recommendations, we look at the contracts that we have, and it's not just the contract with the hauler and the contract with the waste management facility in Bourne, But we have other agreements and other contracts with other vendors and entities that serve our waste management facility. So when we look at contracts, we look at all those kinds of agreements. Again, we also look for compliance. We look at curbside drop-off practices. We look at the operations of the waste management facility, the swap shop. You can see there's a host of areas that we have been looking into. And you should know down the line, we have been working in these areas, gathering data, and we will be making recommendations down the line, specific recommendations in these areas. Criteria. So when we look at these different facets of how we do waste in this town, what do we look for? Again, we look for compliance. How does this aspect of how we do trash in town, how we do waste, how does it comply with the regulations? Second important question is, does it deliver the service it's supposed to deliver? You know, and then, is it operating efficiently? Is it cost effective? Very important, because there's a lot of waste in waste we are discovering. And of course, does it all engage and educate the public? That criteria is extremely important in looking at waste strategies in this town. All right. Now, I was talking about compliance, and this is going to lead us into the recommendations. We know, according to the state, that waste ban enforcement through local mandatory recycling bylaws or ordinances actually helps to decrease what we call contamination by 15% in the first year. What are we talking about here? Contamination has to do with materials, waste materials that are put in the wrong places, particularly recycling materials that get thrown into our trash. That is a violation of a regulation issued by the state. There are other regulations on materials, toxic materials, everything from fluorescent light bulbs to paint to used waste oil to the old couch in the cellar. And again, compliance is extremely important. But in this case, when a town takes the initiative to put a recycling bylaw in place and to enforce it, statistics show that there's a 15% reduction in contamination. Now, let me tell you what that means. Find my numbers here. Falmouth, based on 2016 figures, and also taken out of the contract with the hauler, we deliver 11,300 tons of trash to Bourne, right? We pay $58 a ton. That comes out to be $655,400. Now, if we were to reduce that by 15%, that would be $98,310. It behooves this town to recycle properly, not just because there are regulations that say we need to do it, not just for environmental reasons, but there are some very significant cost savings. And by the way, I just want to throw out this other figure that I came across. Food waste, unfortunately, is a big portion of trash because food waste is heavy. The national average is 23% of our trash contains food waste. You take 23% and you calculate that at $58 a ton. That's a savings of $150,000. So there are ways, better ways. We know there are better ways to do trash for a lot of reasons.
And I just want to let you know, you're about halfway through your time, so
Good.
make sure you're halfway through your presentation.
Yes, I am.
Good.
So now we're on to the recommendations. We're going to move into the recommendations. And this is the change, by the way. This is the correction. I'm sorry for the other one, which is, anyway, forget this. This is the correct one. All right, what are we looking for? Well, we're recommending a town-wide recycling bylaw for the 2018 spring town meeting. A bylaw was suggested several years ago. It was looked into. There was a lot of discussion about it, but it was never really presented. We'll leave it there. We think that it is timely now to have a recycling bylaw. For one thing, it complements already what is in place by the state and what we are expected to do. What the bylaw will bring, it'll bring enforcement. It'll bring enforcement, and coupled with a solid waste manager, which we continue to advocate for, having someone in that role to enforce, makes it successful, we hope, all right? So those are the two recommendations. Now, we've been advocating for the solid waste manager for a long time. Presently, there are 3 DPW personnel involved in how we do waste and trash, and they have other responsibilities. Our recommendation is not a criticism of them. It is an evaluation of the system as we have it in place and where it can be more effective and more efficient. Someone who takes charge of all the aspects of waste. So, you can flip that up. We have an opportunity. We have an opportunity, and this is what we really would like the town to look into, the Board of Selectmen, management, and the DPW personnel. There is, through the Massachusetts DEP grant program, a position called the Waste Reduction Enforcement Coordinator. And it's a grant. And basically what this person would do would be to enforce compliance, enforce the state regulations that are in place, and also, coupled with our own bylaw, would make us do what we really should be doing. Now, I've asked if Carrie Parcell from the county, who really is supported and paid for by the DEP, she can speak to this, and I'd like her to just describe what that is, briefly. She's a lot more articulate.
Sure, if you want to come up to the podium for the folks at home. And we've got about 3 more minutes.
She'll do it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here this evening.
Welcome.
I'm here to assist on behalf of the DPWs and the solid waste committees. I work for Mass DEP through Barnstable County, and so this is a program that Mass DEP has had for a long time. There's 8 people in my position, coupled and sprinkled throughout the state. So what a waste reduction coordinator will do, coupled with the 2 things that are necessary to qualify to be with this grant, is it will be a boots on the ground person who can help enforce the fee schedules that will be mandated in your bylaw. So first warning, second warning, so they're going to go around and check and report and record non-compliance of residences, and through the contracts you'll determine how that fee schedule will be. Is it to the hauler or is it to the resident? How are you going to contract that out? So you'd have to figure that out through your bylaw, and then the bylaw is for mandatory recycling, saying that the threshold for contamination is approximately 20 to 30%, and if it is higher than that, then that haul has to be rejected by the hauler and that the resident is notified. And the enforcement coordinator is the person who can do that for you, so that these guys can maintain staying the DPWs, we're dealing with the roadways, the highways, and all the other stuff that they're doing. So it's just a person who is an addition through the DPW that can enforce what you put in as a bylaw, as well as what your fee schedule would wind up being.
And it looks like it's a $50,000 total grant with matching funds from the town of $15,000? Is that what this chart is saying?
Right, and typically it's about a 25% match, and if you can get it 25% from the town, they prioritize your grant requests and your application. The bylaw and ordinance fee schedule has to be in place prior to hiring that coordinator. And there is no need for the towns to continue after the grant because the town is invested through that match, and that's why it's a match grant. So the 18 to 24 months that the money is being reimbursed to the town for this particular position is only in the duration of the grant, and then the state will reimburse the town for agreed upon costs through the grant agreement.
And what's the typical duration, did you say?
18 to 24 months, and they're finding that it takes about 3 years to close the grant completely with the final reports at the end.
And what happens to the penalties that are collected?
Traditionally, they hope that this position will resume, that you'll see its value, and that it will continue. There's other towns, I have some examples that I'll send over to the DPW and they can forward with you of, bylaws and how what's the word I'm looking for, how the position is worded for that town, because every town is unique, so they need unique things within that, within that position.
Is part of your job helping to apply for these grants?
Yes, I can and am willing to sit down. I can't apply for them for you, but I can come in and offer and support and guide, and this is what the town could use, this is something that would be, and then the town really ultimately decides, the DPWs and those who are listed as contacts through the retrack, which is the application system to the state. And there are some limitations to what their ability is, so they come to the boards of selectmen and to the town when it comes to fee schedules and regulation changes, etc.
Great. Questions from the board? Anyone?
Well, a question / comment, but just in terms of ideas about other grants that we might be eligible for going forward, I know that Linda touched on, I think, sort of, something that we really don't address much, which is that food waste and a lot of the, I know because I sat in and you were talking about some really amazing, composting programs that communities have and how much that's reduced their solid waste and the money they're spending on it. So I know maybe the window might not be the right time at this moment, but I know that you had mentioned some other possible grants that we could look at around those issues,
Yes.
not just funding a new position, but also doing something more creative as well with some of our waste that we don't address that. That's a little bit different than recycling, but certainly an area that I think a lot of other communities are trying to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could get grants for piloting curbside pickup for food waste. You can get grants to purchase at-home composters and provide them at the DPW for a subsidized cost to your residents. You can apply for a collection at the transfer station with signage and the barrels. And you can work with either Mary Ryder of Compost With Me or the Watts Family Farms, are the two that are state qualified vendors.
Mary Ryder being right from Falmouth.
Right, from Falmouth, yes, she is, and she's even sat in as, public comment for the meeting, so, both programs are excellent, they both have proven, if you talk to the town of Dennis, which has been doing it for a while, they initially collected pounds more than they ever thought that they would. Mashpee does their collection through Mary Ryder, it's been about 3 years now. Chatham's been doing it for several years through Watts Family Farms, as well as Barnesville just newly implemented theirs through Watts Family Farm. And so there's still, there's kinks and learning curves and all that stuff, but they all four have collection for food waste at their transfer station that is picked up by either vendor and hauled off Cape. So, and the state's been paying for that.
Great. Terrific presentation. Ms. Davis, final word.
Yeah, final word.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay, so what we'd
Thank
like
you.
you to do, what we really would like you to do is, I'd like to start a conversation about this position and maybe some other grants that are coming down that are available. And I don't know really how to start that.
I think you just did.
Okay. I think that the town manager obviously has maybe some ideas of how to bring some people together. to see if we fit with this. And who knows, it could be possibly a forerunner of the position that we would love to have as to head this all up someday. So let's start that talk, okay? We'll be waiting to hear from you after town meeting.
Absolutely.
All right?
Thank you, Linda. Great
so much.
presentation to the whole
Solid waste.
committee. Terrific work, much appreciated. Lots of detail, lots of potential. Thank you very much. We next have the Coonamessett River Restoration Update. Betsy Gladfelder, welcome. Dr. Gladfelder, would you introduce yourself with a sentence something like, and the award I was just given by the, is it APCC, or, I was at the ceremony, Andrew Gottlieb's group.
I'm not quite sure how you want me to introduce myself. I'm Betsy
Just say what
Gladfelder.
award you just got.
Pardon me?
The award you just got.
Do you want me to say that I just got an award?
Yes.
All right. Sue was at the ceremony. At the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, I was given the Special Recognition Award for the leadership for the Coonamessett River Restoration.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Sue.
Huge. I knew you wouldn't mention it, so.
No, I would not have. I want to start tonight's presentation by giving you some ways to look at this in different temporal and spatial scales than you may have in the past. And the three things we're going to function on, we're going to concentrate on for the restoration are the role in improving the fisheries, role of improving coastal resiliency, and also the education and recreation opportunities. The Coonamessett River restoration that actually began this morning, although the official ceremony is in 2 weeks, is the Lower Coonamessett River Restoration Project. The Coonamessett River, when European settlers first came, was called the 5 Mile River because it's 5 miles from Coonamessett Pond to Vineyard Sound. And at that time, it was the eastern boundary of Falmouth. One of the things I want you to notice on this slide, you see where we are in Massachusetts, and one of the important roles of the fishes that the reason the funding agencies are concerned with this are that these are diadromous fishes. They spend part of their time in freshwater, part of their time in saltwater. An important role that they play is tying those two ecosystems together. And the loss of many of the freshwater fisheries has had a major impact on our marine fisheries as well, because they're part of the food chain. Next. Okay, just so the river 500 years ago, pre-contact period, was a wild river. But just to give you a historical perspective, land use changes through time. And you can see pictures of land use change in, say, even in the 20th century in Cape Cod, and to see how it's changed. But along the Coonamessett River, the flow of wetlands from the Coonamessett Pond to Great Pond was interrupted at least more than 300 years ago by damming up the river from mill streams. And so for a 200-year period, along the river, not just this river, but many rivers in the Cape, we had mill ponds. But mills moved elsewhere because economies change in time. In the late 1800s to the early 2000s, the Coonamessett River, as many rivers, those wetlands were converted to cranberry bogs. This project is the next stage, and the term now that's used in ecology is rewilding wetlands. Next. So how will this be done? Well, the first thing is accumulated sand on the bog platforms will be removed. Those of you who are familiar with what lower bog looks like right now, it's becoming a pine forest. It's becoming a pine forest because pines do live in upland sandy areas. The last 115 years of cranberry production has added sand. Cranberries grow better with sand. So 1 to 3 feet, depending on where in the platform, of this sand will be removed, and the river will be restored to wetlands. Next thing, LWD is large woody debris, and I'll show you in a minute what that will be used for along the river channel. It will also be added to the platform because it will help in nitrogen reduction. There'll be buffer plantings that are added along the river itself to shade the stream. The river will also tie into cold water springs, and I'll show you that in a minute. And 2 dams will be removed, and the pipe culvert underneath John Parker Road will be replaced by a Massachusetts-approved stream crossing culvert at John Parker Road. Next. The picture in the top left shows you what the pipes look like under John Parker Road. And when I took our town engineer out there for the first time, and I said, Jim, it looks to me like the road's kind of dipping. And he said, not only is it dipping, he said, but there's a crack in the road and water's pouring through down into this area. So the project has 2 phases. Phase 1 is, like I said, started today. Lower dam will be removed and lower bog will be restored. Phase 2, this year the engineering design of phase 2 was completed. We've had a technical meeting, and that now those plans are being used to apply for permits. The construction for phase 2 will most likely be in either in summer or fall of 2019. Next. Okay, what do these blockages mean? Well, there are 2 things that it affects, and this has to do with coastal resiliency. One is if there's storm surge coming from ocean storms. This is a map showing Category 2 is green, yellow is Category 3, red is Category 4. How far the storm surge would go upriver. You know, if you have a long, narrow area and you're forcing water up and it's narrow, the water gets shot higher. So one of the effects of these blockages is that it blocks the flow of water so that green, instead of passing up to the next area, would spread out to the roads to either side, in this case, Oxbow Road and Zeke's Road. The other thing that's important, and this came up, most of you were at the meeting on Saturday, we talked about the role of natural wetlands. Natural wetlands serve as a sponge when there's water from the land or water from the sea, and they also serve as a filter. They're filtering out nitrogen, they serve as carbon sinks, and it's important in these wetlands to have the flow of water not only north and south, but also east and west across the bog. And as Kevin Kruger pointed out at the meeting, with sea level rise, we're going to have water table rise. So there's a vertical component. Next. I just put this on to show you that it's not a trivial thing to try to do work in the wetlands. These are the permits that we've had to apply for. Almost every one of these required a field trip. Next. Okay, restoration started today. It's not going to look so pretty at first. When there's going to be big equipment, sand is going to be removed from the surface, and once time of year restrictions are over, which is November 15th, the channel will be redone. Next. Now, and you'll see a large woody debris being brought out. Next. These are the plans for Lower Bog, and they're, where the red is where the channel currently is. The channel in Lower Bog will be made about 30% longer. And next, we'll look at that little block.
Sorry.
Well, that's okay. I do want to go to this one. Okay. So when we make these bends, what happens is there'll be about 4 layers of large woody debris with root wads. And on the outside of the curve, think if you're flowing down this river, on the outside you're going to be going faster because you have a longer distance, and that'll be an erosional area. And what will happen at these bends is you'll have pools. These pools will be areas, well, there'll be shady areas, and there'll also be areas to avoid predation. Next. Okay, we also have the plans for middle and upper or reservoir bog, but I wanted to show you a little bit, I want to show you 3 things here. One is, thanks to some work that the Coonamessett River Trust has done on temperature monitoring all around, the reason that it's really important to have, well, if you have vertical, horizontal connectivity, is that this river, unlike the river you learned about back in 3rd grade, that was a very steep river and you had a pond or a lake and water went down the waterfall and down the valley. This is a river where much of the water in the river comes from springs and seeps along the side. And so some of those areas that are especially strong springs, there'll be side streams that are created, and these will be especially important for brook trout. And for those of you who are fishermen, we're hoping, I always say once we know we have salter trout, then I can stop my work on Coonamessett. But I was told by our trout specialist that I can't stop yet. Okay, the second thing is you see deeper pools. And the third thing to show you is instead of those rusty culverts, or rusty pipes, I should say, over John Parker Road, we'll have a culvert that's been put in. And that our DPW is working with our river restoration ecologist, and they've hired a specialist, Ty and Bond, and they actually, Julian, they actually send things to DOT, and I'm getting all these things from SUSA, but it's S-O-U-S-A. But I didn't realize that at first, and I'm thinking, why is Julian sending me these engineering plans?
Betsy, a quick question on that.
Yeah.
Is that where John Parker Road constantly washes out? I mean, there's like the pond and then this little marshy area. Is that going to allow residents to traverse the road more, or is this a different area?
I think this is a different area.
Okay, fine.
This is John Parker Road, and
I get a
It's
lot
not
of
marching where the road
complaints
is.
from residents who have trouble with that road, so just
You're
wondering if
thinking
that
of
would.
Parker Road.
Ah, thank you, that's the difference.
This is the
Okay.
culvert
Different complaint.
where Lower and Middle Bog,
no, middle and upper.
okay, where
Or middle
where
and
John
Reservoir
Parker Road
Bog.
curves.
Yeah,
Okay.
where John Parker Road goes between
the two.
Okay.
2 areas.
Great.
And this is designed according to the all culverts now have on cold water springs have to be designed to maximize the passage of fish through it. Okay. I know there's been some concern that these bogs are going to turn into forest. They're not going to turn into forest. These are going to be wetlands. And this is a 3-year post-restoration in Tidmarsh. I saw an 8-year post-restoration in Eel River recently, and it looks just like this. Eventually, there'll be some red maples that will come in, but this is wetlands. This is not upland forest. Next. Okay, just a quick review of the goals. This is to establish a healthy, self-sustaining river. This is a critical link between marine and freshwater ecosystems. And once this project is over, from Great Pond up, there'll be 2.2 miles of free-flowing stream. There's still some culvert work that needs to be done further north by Broad River, but that's not part of this project. Second is to increase coastal resiliency by removing the blockages and creating connectivity of floodplains. What will come is a biodiverse, natural wetland community that will help with flood storage, nutrient reduction, and especially important, rapid recovery after disturbance. Eliminate maintenance and repair costs of dams and culverts, to improve access to recreation and education, and to provide opportunities for people of all ages to enjoy the land, learn about the environment, cultural history of the river. Next. I want to point out that to date we have almost, these groups have and are contributing almost $2 million to this project, and we recently received word that the Cape Cod Conservation District Natural Resource Conservation Service of the USDA has just awarded us $500,000 or maybe a little bit more.
Mark Forrest did a good job moving that too, so.
He did.
That's great.
He did. I also want to point out, and let me just look at this. Thank you for accepting the gift from Lawrence Lynch today. I also want to point out that we've had over $30,000 worth of large woody debris donated by Hamilton Tree, donated to the Coonamessett River Trust, who is one of our partners. And Jen and I just sent in the report for NOAA. I'm working on the NOAA and the NIFWIF grant reports. And we had about $90,000 of matching funds in volunteer labor for people who've been working on this project. That's just for this year. And we don't get much money. We can only put in for $27.82 for the workers and $42.75 for higher level work. So that's a lot of work. That's almost 1,000 hours of volunteer time.
Wow.
Next. I just want to point out that you look at these agencies and they all have these beautiful logos, but there are people behind all these agencies. And these are just from a bunch of different field trips. There's Nick from DPW out doing some surveying, APCC, and Division of Ecological Restoration, working with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, doing a GPR survey. There's been a lot of volunteer labor put into this. But where did these people come from? Next. So many of you know about this project that Jane Baker did. She worked with her high school students and the T-ticket second graders, and they worked on migration of birds in the fall and fish in the spring. And I was roped into this to work with the second graders, and that was the best thing I spent my time on last year. So we went in for a discussion of migration. Then Jane went in, and they all painted a herring. Then we went on a field trip to see the river. Then Coonamessett River Trust has an adopt-a-herring, and so they all had a herring. And the fish they did were added to something that the high school kids had done. That's a 2-foot by 8-foot panel that went to an art contest in Provincetown, and we'll have it for the trail. And then I got to finish, and I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do for the wrap-up, and I was told I didn't have to worry. They all wanted to tell me what happened to their fish, and what other questions they had. And one of the questions they had was, Betsy, my fish got stuck at JP. Why did they get stuck at JP? And I said, remember I showed you the culverts that they had to go through? And it turns out in the tagging, one of the things the tagging was able to show is the effect that these blockages had on fish passage. Next. So the final thing is the Coonamessett Greenway, which is a concept of Beth Schwartzman from the 300 Committee, has almost all the land bordering the Coonamessett River is now conservation land. Next. And the other project we're working on, and we're working on closely with the 300 Committee, is development of the Coonamessett River Heritage Trail and the Gateway Park. And we've started a conceptual plan of the entrance to the trail at the Gateway Park. And in this park, we'll have way stations along the way with interpretive signs on natural history and also on cultural history, because this is a rich area. It's an opportunity to learn not only about our town, but many towns in the Cape had a similar history to this.
Dr. Gladfelder, only because this table is between the two of us, I have to make one more recognition. You've been recognized by the region. Lots of people have been contributing to the project, but if anyone moved to Falmouth yesterday, this is only one of the hundreds or thousands of hours of volunteer work. I'm sure everyone thinks you're employed by the town or something. This is over the top, a huge project. I can only, not only affecting school children, teachers having a blast, that, this is ecotourism. I mean, I think this is going to bring, funds to Main Street, not to mention, just the, taking care of our world, for the future. So I'm just going to
I just want to say it's a pleasure for me to work with, and I said this to you the other day, to all the people in the town of Falmouth, all the people who work for the town of Falmouth, including the special employees, and for everybody else who's worked on this project. It's exciting.
Thank you very much.
And I look forward to continue. And if you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them.
There's a question or two.
Just a question about the Middle Bog part.
Yep.
In Lower Bog, there's a lot of redirecting of the river.
Mhm.
Will that happen in the Middle Bog
Yes.
as well? Because I didn't see any red lines on that showing.
I didn't show you Middle Bog.
Okay.
Sue told me, and I promised Sam I would only talk for 10 minutes. So I cut a few slides out. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be happy to. You want me to send you the 75% plans?
That'd be great.
Yep,
Thanks.
be happy to.
Thank you very much. Great. I now want to call Mike Galasso, who's the head of EDIC, for an Open Cape presentation. And I know you have a guest, Mike. Welcome. And also, I see some members of the board. Mike, do you want to start with an introduction to the members of the board?
Sure,
here?
yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Michael Galasso, Chairman of the Falmouth EDIC. Here with me this evening is Steve Johnson. He's the Executive Director of Open Cape. And Brooks Bartlett, he's our EDIC board member and chairperson of the Open Cape Subcommittee. So, during the summer, myself, Mike Kasparian, Brooks, Steve became aware of some issues regarding our merchants on Main Street they were having with their internet connection. The good news is that business on Main Street was very robust this summer. The problem was that with the current Comcast internet connection, they couldn't keep up with the volume of transactions. As we all know, every transaction these days goes through the internet, and many of the merchants were having a hard time making that internet connection, so they're there getting ready to make a sale with a customer, and all they get is the circle going around and around on their computer. So that's a real problem. Many of them had to end up handwriting receipts and handwriting credit card slips like we used to do in the old days. So Brooks, myself, and Mike contacted Steve to come up with a solution. Before we get to that, just a little bit of background on Open Cape. So Open Cape is a fiber optic network that was installed a number of years ago, and it's throughout our community. And here are some of the places that it serves. It's over 500 miles long, 212 clients right now. I think what's important to know is how fast it is. So right now, the average speed of our Comcast connections is about 44 megabytes per second. That's the download speed, and upload is about 7. Open Cape will offer speeds from 20 megabytes per second to over 100 gigabytes. I mean, that's extremely quick. I mean, that's as quick as any internet connection that's currently available, even what Comcast is currently promoting in some areas of their service. You may have heard their recent commercials talking about increasing speed. But Open Cape will exceed that. Also, Open Cape is 100% local, not-for-profit. And I know that many of us send our money every month to Comcast in Newark, New Jersey. So it's a local nonprofit that we at the EDIC strongly want to support, and I hope that everyone in the community does too. So next, Peter, I'm going to, here's what we just talked about, that the merchants on Main Street were having severe delays of spinning wheels all summer long. They had to resort to writing down credit card information. And it's not only that transaction, but many of them keep their inventory in order off the internet. And it was really painful for them not be able to do that, keep up with inventory, make those transactions. So we asked Open Cape to come up with a possible solution. Steve will talk a little bit about this map, where the current service is, and what it's going to take to service those merchants on Main Street. So Steve?
Thank you, Michael.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you, members of the Select Board, for having me yet again. I feel like I'm here all the time now. I'm going to walk around and talk about this map a little bit, just so you guys can see everything. So the blue lines, the dark blue lines, are our backbone. So think about that as the main arteries. The green lines that connect various parts of the network here, and I'll stand over here as well. Laterals out to various locations, fire, schools. We're just connecting the new Sotheby's office on Main Street. We're building that out next week. Over here you can see Falmouth Academy, AT&T site, Falmouth Hospital up there. So we're really starting to get a significant penetration into Falmouth. If we can look at the next slide, it's a zoom, Peter. Right, so one of the issues that really existed was this section of Main Street from right here. So here's Gifford Street. Here's the library. So we jump into some underground conduit the town of Falmouth has, and we get into the library right there. But from here down, this part of Main Street, a few years ago, you guys moved all the poles to behind the building for, you know, all the obvious aesthetic reasons and things like that. And it looks great. So what it does, it makes this a little more challenging. So what we looked at is how do we service these buildings, and then further down toward Palmer Ave. We're down on Palmer Ave as well. It's just off the map down there. And we looked at a couple different things. So we have a couple scenarios here. This would be aerial build that we would license out on these poles behind us, and we can come out here. We could actually bring direct service into the town hall. The town hall gets its service now through fiber that Falmouth owns, and we just provide service through that. So we could provide another redundant connection while we were doing this. And then likewise up here behind the magenta line, if you will, is another aerial line. They're a little hard to get to, and it took us a while to figure out how to get there. This is some conduit we just uncovered this week. There's a pole right here and a dumpster, and that conduit comes out here on Main Street. And we're now working with the fire department to figure out there's a fire alarm cable in there right now to see if we can get access to that conduit. Because originally we had proposed to the EDIC, to build this out would be substantially expensive in terms of licensing and all the aerial portions, because we'd also have to dig some underground. That doesn't necessarily exist now. If we can use these light blue sections, this is an existing manhole system and a conduit system, a 4-inch conduit system that comes up on this pole right over by the Chamber of Commerce. If we can get into those poles, that literally saves us about $90,000 in build cost, which is it's more than half the budget, just about half the budget. So that would be the idea, is that by coming in behind these buildings, behind these buildings as well, we could connect all these buildings, and we could offer two kinds of connections. We would offer our traditional business connection, which is, so there's two services we offer. Dedicated and symmetrical service. So if you're sending a lot of data, you're moving a lot of information, large files, you may want a symmetrical service, which means your download and your upload are the exact same. For those of you who sat through this presentation a couple times, you know this at this point. The other thing is the dedicated service. So what these store owners are seeing is, during the busiest time of the season, the summer here, the existing Comcast infrastructure is simply overwhelmed. It's aging coaxial, and it simply can't deal with the demands of cell phone traffic, because like 1% of our cell phone calls actually travel via the air. The rest of them actually travel, the other 99% travel through the internet. So the Comcast network simply can't handle the demand, and that's why you're seeing the spinning wheel all summer. You can't run credit card processing. It's why we all see our Comcast connections at home slow down when it's super busy. So the great thing is that doesn't happen with us at all. So the two services we offer is this dedicated service, dedicated symmetrical service, which simply means if you need 100 megs or 500 megs or a gig at your business, it'll always be there waiting for you 24/7, 365 days a year. It's dedicated to your particular location, so it's always there. The other type of service we propose here is a PON solution, a passive optical network. It's kind of like what Google Fiber has been doing in Kansas City or Huntsville or Nashville or any of those cities, which is more like Fios on steroids, if you will. It's substantially cheaper because it's not dedicated. It does go up and down a little bit. It varies. So if you log on at night, you might connect and get a full gig, which is 1,000 megabytes per second download. If you connect at the busiest time of the day, you might get 500 or 600 megs, which is more than enough for shopkeepers to process credit cards, stream Pandora in their stores, access their data inventory, do all the things they need to do. And the cost of that service would be on par or even less than their current Comcast service. Typically, we'd be offering that service between $75 and $115 a month, which is fantastic. The dedicated symmetrical service is more expensive just because it's dedicated. So, and that starts about $300 a month. So those are the two proposals we've kind of outlined for addressing this issue. And what we've done, you want to keep on what we've done moving forward? Okay. I didn't mean to take over your presentation. So what we've done, you can see I've highlighted the aerial parts in magenta, the light blue. There are two services. We've talked through these. So Peter, the next slide, please. So what we did is we set up a survey. This survey, SurveyMonkey, is in place. It's operative right now for all the downtown businesses to say what they're interested, what kind of level of service they'd be interested in. And we break out more detail about dedicated symmetrical service and the PON service. This will give us a really great idea of who's really interested. And we thought have the process active over the next 2 weeks. We process all that data and then come back and report to you all on what we found. So that's kind of where we are today. Questions, Megan?
I had a question just about, and I know clearly this, this particular geographical area is an area of focus right now, but what is the connectivity around the industrial park here in Falmouth?
Sure. So we currently connect, and when you say the industrial park, there's actually two industrial parks. So we connect the Woods Hole group over in the industrial park where the hockey rink is. I'm a hockey parent, so everything I relate everything to hockey. Okay. The other industrial park where like Benthos, we're on the main street going by there. We don't go down that street. So one of the things we've been doing really very recently is focusing on connecting those type of businesses to the network. So that was just we just built out into Woods Hole, and where we've been serving Hui for a while, but now we're expanding to service NOAA, MBL, all those businesses directly. I think you're going to see a lot more of that in Falmouth, just on Main Street alone. We're just, the new Sotheby's location, that turned around in like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear. It's good to hear that you're already sort of moving in that direction, because I know we've talked as a board and as a town repeatedly about, the only way we're going, we are positioned in many ways to attract, new businesses here, big businesses, whether, it's something in the sciences or in tech. We have the space. It's cheaper than being on 128 or near Boston. We have great schools, but obviously they can't come here unless they have that security of being able to have the connectivity that you need for businesses like that.
And so I work a lot with the Commonwealth's Office of Business Development on those particular issues. And are we going to see Amazon's headquarters, come to Falmouth? I wish we would.
Only in the summer.
Yeah, I don't see that happening, just because of the issues getting over the bridge and traffic and all those type of things. But what I do see is us keeping businesses on the Cape, businesses like, Hydroid.
Well, I was just going to say, so
a perfect
businesses
example
like Hydroid that employ a lot of individuals, that pull, that are somewhat naturally connected to our institutions in Woods Hole, but employ beyond that and have good jobs, and that kind of ripples out. Being able to replicate that a bit more. We talk all the time about the struggle of having good paying jobs here on the Cape so that we can keep younger people here, pull in new families. It continues to be a challenge, and I think the reality is that technology piece is a challenge for those businesses.
Well, this should make you feel better. Falmouth is doing better than most on the Cape. In terms of, I think we connect now about 20 different municipal buildings, and we connect all your schools, and you're moving data back and forth between that. So you have a highly evolved, efficient system that's growing on a daily basis. This would only add to that, and it would give you tremendous flexibility down the road. When you talk about, your winter stroll and things like that, and surveillance cameras and public safety, we're really focusing a lot on that with the law enforcement communities as well. So this is, we're talking about it for serving businesses on Main Street right now, but really there's multiple applications that look at, every level of how your connectivity in a growing environment works.
Thank you.
Great. If I just make a couple real quick closing comments. Yes, on the tech park, there is a line that goes into it, but it's not well distributed up there yet. So that's something that we're working on so we can get it to more service. Also on the tech park, the EDIC is working on, we feel that our job is not completed at the tech park. It's only 50% built out right now. So we're working on coming up with some marketing plans and promoting the park. We have got some recent interest in some folks who want to build out in the park. But I think having the Open Cape available to all the parcels out there will be very important.
And there's a new website in that regard, which is a good contact point for EDIC as a brand new website.
Yes, and we'll be putting this up because we want everyone, every merchant, every property owner on Main Street to please go into the survey so we know what the demand is there. We know that there's a problem. I think we're coming up with a solution. And I'm also working with Steve and Open Cape on getting Open Cape into a 40B project that we're doing in North Falmouth. So this is important for businesses. It's also important for residents, and as we all know, for people who work at home too. So I want to thank you for inviting us here this evening, and Steve and Brooks for coming and have any questions.
So more to come if you watch what goes on at the EDIC meetings.
Yes, and if we could put this on the town's webpage too, if that's possible, to make a link to this on the town's webpage, that would be helpful too.
So how does a business check to see if they can get onto the Open Cape network? I mean, do you know
if you go onto the Open Cape website, there is a map in there that shows where the line currently is.
Okay.
And so that's the first thing, and as Steve mentioned, it doesn't run down Main Street right now. It's on the back poles and stuff. Mm-hmm. And we're working with Steve financially to see how we can help assist, property owners, business owners to make that connection too.
So is it possible then that some people on the south side may find that they can get access to it? Is wireless connection, or is it a hard wire?
It's a hard wire connection.
Okay.
Yes.
So the concept of wireless versus wireline is something that we talk about all the time. You know, I think wireless is great. I think wireless should be part of any solution that we offer to a community. You know, if it's downtown, you want people on the main street to have access to wireless. But this is a solution for the next 30 or 40 years versus the next 3 or 4 years. You know, you're talking about the lifespan of fiber. Once we run the cable, that cable has infinite use. As long as we change the electronics on either end, the fiber still remains what it is. It's a piece of glass that's moving data. So it gives you tremendous flexibility down the road.
So is it the fact that to provide the infrastructure, you got to be able to get a payback? So you'll start with the line service?
There's
and
a
then-
lot of information on the website, too. If you actually go on the Open Cape website, that's another good place to get information.
Oh,
I mean, our focus
does
is
it
really-
explain the implementation strategy? of
Yeah,
the-
I mean, our focus really, just really quickly, is our focus is just, you know, making the network strong and sustainable. And by doing that, we've been focusing on towns, businesses, and municipal offices right now. Because by getting those type of clients, it makes the network strong, so we're here for decades to come. We can compete. I can't physically compete against Comcast. They're a $200 billion a year company.
Right.
I just don't have that type of budgets. But what I can do is make a strong, sustainable network of clients connected that we can continue to expand out. So we're following this kind of near net strategy. And we are making people, if they want to connect, they've got to help us. I'm not paying for the connections. I'm making them pay the connections. And that puts less stress on our finances. So Open Cape has never been in a stronger financial position than it is now. We're connecting people at a weekly rate. So we're very strong. We're growing relatively quickly.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Next, we have discussion on upcoming legislative hearing on House Bill 3792, which is the Falmouth seasonal room tax. And one of the reasons we wanted to put this on the agenda is so everyone who might be watching can know that the town of Falmouth can provide written testimony, or individuals may appear at the hearing to give verbal testimony. Representative Fernandez's office is the person that forwarded the information, and the contact is Sean Keady. You can look that up at mahouse.gov. And Mr. Suso, did you want to give a little more presentation based upon town council's review?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. As you noted, Representative Fernandez contacted us to indicate and confirm that at this time there is a hearing scheduled, legislative hearing on the proposed seasonal lodging tax. The bill that was passed here, the bylaw by town meeting and approved by the Board of Selectmen as well. That hearing is going to be on actually on Halloween, 1 p.m. on Halloween, October 31st in Boston. And any and all are invited to provide testimony, either, as you noted, in written form or verbal. And we can certainly provide a letter of support on behalf of the board if that would be the desire of the board. Comments from town council, we know that we've had increasing legislative support at the state level for seasonal lodging tax. However, there continues to be some pushback on it. It would be a huge benefit, obviously, to the town of Falmouth and other municipalities on the Cape, and we're hopeful that with the appropriate continued legislative approval by our legislative delegation and others, that we can break in to that opportunity and make that available in the town of Falmouth. But it's going to require continued support and lobbying of our legislators and legislators throughout the Commonwealth to allow that to occur and to really promote a more equitable situation than we have currently, whereby our local commercial establishments do pay a tax, but there is no tax currently paid for the seasonal use of lodging of residences here on the Cape. We want to really resolve that current inequity to the benefit of all concerned and level the playing field. So we encourage any and all in getting involved in this in support of the town as well.
So that would, if this passes, it would grow the amount of local tax that Falmouth now receives. It would be
That's
a
correct.
bigger amount because there would be more establishments that would be under that taxation.
Correct, and level, really make it a more equitable situation now, because our local business establishments are carrying the freight alone on this and are at a disadvantage with the seasonal residences that are participating but not paying their fair share.
Any thoughts by the board?
Just that we've been fighting this fight for 4 or 5 years now, and the fact it's actually come out of committee and it has a legislative hearing is a step in the right direction. I'm not all that optimistic it's going to get there, but we're getting closer.
Absolutely.
And the internet sites that are providing these hostings are preparing their operators that it's coming, and they're actually making plans to provide, interact with it, so it'll happen.
So I would move that we do ask the town manager to submit a letter in support from the town on this
Second.
issue.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a comment to say that I think this is moving closer, and it's actually getting more support across the state. More and more municipalities realize that that inequity is affecting them. So there is hope. I echo Doug's comment.
Absolutely. Next, we have approvals for minutes of meetings, the first being a public session, April 24, 2017. Did everyone have a chance to review? And are there is there a motion to approve?
I move approval and release to public.
These are,
action.
these
This
are
is the public session for April 24.
Yes,
So would,
yes, I reviewed
there's
them.
no
and I-
release, it's already public.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Next one is the open session for Monday, October 2, 2017.
I move that we approve.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next one is the executive session for September 25th, 2017.
I presented, Sam brought to my attention that it looked like I didn't vote on 2 issues, and I brought that to Jennifer's attention earlier. So with that correction, which is just noting my vote and that I was there, I would move approval.
Right,
Second.
and not to release.
And not to release, correct.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have individual selectmen reports. Doug?
I just had a meeting this week with Jen McKay, who explained to me in more detail the Coonamessett River situation. It was a good learning experience. I'm glad I took the extra couple hours to understand the whole situation a little more clearly.
Nice.
And another conversation, unrelated to any other ongoing business, was with local taxi driver who reiterated his concern about the Uber and the Lyft operating in Falmouth with another uneven playing field, and is hopeful that Selectmen would take some sort of action, even though the state has given us guidance that we shouldn't interfere, I think. Is that correct?
Correct.
But it just doesn't seem right to me that it seems like we're headed towards where we might potentially put taxi businesses out of business.
Well, I was asked to appear at the multi-island selectmen's meeting in Tisbury this week, and I was there somewhat on behalf of the Cape and Island Selectmen, but I stayed for the presentations, and one of them was, in fact, taxi drivers from the island. And again, being vice chair for the EDIC, my EDIC hat, is the absolute necessity for us to do as much as we possibly can to protect small businesses. And what I would, if you go back, circle around to that conversation with the taxi drivers, the folks on the vineyard will have on the website where you can get it from, they were going to send it to me, I just haven't received it yet, get it from Tisbury, and there is a really fantastic presentation about how important the issue is, what it means on the bottom line to these businesses, what you can do, what other towns do. The guy who's the taxi driver is some MIT-type economics grad who now has a taxi business, and I think if they got together and really maybe spoke at Cape and Island Selectmen, or, I think they're at the point where it'd be great to get the word out. So contact Tisbury, or look on the website, have him rather, for that information. They should be working together.
And also, it's my understanding that other towns, in spite of direction from the state, other towns have put regulations in place which are not specifically regulations as much as requiring registration and identification of who these drivers are. So, I mean, I think there's things we can do without contradicting the state's instruction, but we should have some kind of a database of these operators.
Well, and, there are public safety concerns, and there certainly are a lot of ideas, so I think it is worth, working with our chief of police and town council and look at what the options are.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate you raising it. Sam?
Yes, well, I've attended a number of meetings in Obstacle Board, the Finance Committee, the Conservation Commission, and the Community Preservation Committee meetings, all moving things in a way that's helping the town improve its quality. But I did want to make a comment about our joint planning meeting on Saturday. I thought it was really a valuable opportunity for us to share our various planning issues and goals. And I think what it did is, and we have a learning curve, and we may have read our strategic plan or the elements of the planning board's local comprehensive plan, but it's so easy for us to kind of lose track of what the issues are and where the priorities are to be. And I think this kind of joint meeting really helps us highlight some of the issues and allows us to better prioritize where we want to focus. So I just want to say I thought it was a valuable, I mean, I don't know whether everybody else feels the same way, but I think in terms of moving the plan, moving the community and the town forward in terms of anticipating various planning needs that need to be addressed, I thought it was an excellent event.
And that's on FCTV. If anyone wants to take a look at it, I think it would be worth your while. It's very different. We had about 6 boards, I think, and really tremendous amount of commitment for 3 hours on a Saturday. So thanks to all the boards as well.
Indeed. I think it speaks to Falmouth and the willingness of residents, of citizens to really come out and help support this town and its future.
And staff.
And
that was,
absolutely. Yeah, there were quite a few staff.
Yeah, there were quite a few staff members there as well. No, I would just echo that. I think that it was I think even more kind of productive in some ways in our first meeting. Just that the conversations I think are just flowing in a more natural way, where there's, and I think perhaps because we brought some other folks on board, that the conversation's fleshed out a bit more.
And the venue, thanks to
yes,
Doug Jones for setting up at Falmouth Academy, was a great choice.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Great. Doug?
I had a similar meeting with Betsy Gladfelter that Doug was talking about on the restoration project, and also chat a little more about the pushing forward with pursuing New Bedford as the freight plan for the Steamship Authority, and trying to reiterate our point of view is that we're not trying to move all the freight out here. The freight that is coming locally, of course, is going to use the Woods Hole station. It's really trying to get the freight that's coming from New York, coming from Connecticut, to have that freight that's already passing by New Bedford being that. And the major issue is the New Bedford dock needing some needing to be refurbished, and trying to find out where the funding can come from that.
Well, and another thing interesting about going to the Tisbury All-Island meeting is all the islands' needs with respect to, the steamship and the mandate, because, they have some ports that may not be able to accommodate various things, in which case there'd be increased truck traffic. So I think it does, behooves us to really look at the whole situation in a very comprehensive way. There also may be some accommodations that the island thinks would be easily made that would benefit Falmouth. So I think we can continue that conversation. And one quick note, I see Ms. Braga has the beacon, and that reminds me, the MMA conference is coming up. I know Sam attends every year. If anyone wants to attend, I'm going to make my request of the town manager they have this cool thing where you can book everybody at once. It doesn't require a lot of, reimbursement and coordination and all that. So maybe if anyone wants to go, you can book it now. let the town manager know to coordinate the, the fee that's required. Great seminars, great opportunity to find out what's going on around the state. If somebody else has a better mousetrap, this is where you find out up to the minute, marijuana research and legislation will be out, I'm sure, many other things. Next, Mr. Suso,
Can I just say one other? I'm
sure.
sorry, no, I know Sam was there and Peter was there, but I had the opportunity to attend a ceremony at the fire department, and it was, really wonderful. It was so well attended, and it's just, awarding some special commendations to individuals who've gone kind of above and beyond, as well as, noting individuals who have moved up, and it was, just a great opportunity to see, what your fire department does, but to really hear some of the stories and see the individuals there. And I was really struck by, the whole, we have folks that have been here for a really long time, and then we have a lot of newer individuals that frankly I haven't met before or seen, so it was wonderful to have a lot of those folks in one place. The police department participated, there was a civilian award given out, so really nice job by Chief Smalls and the other individuals who I know helped pull it together. It wasn't a small event, it was a longer ceremony with a lot of moving parts, so it was a great opportunity to participate in that.
One more point I'd like to make is, so we got notice this week that the Steamship Authority, in response to concerns from Woods Hole residents and others in Falmouth, are going to try a pilot program for next year where they're going to reduce the 5:30 a.m. boats to 40 feet or less and offer incentives for the larger trucks to come at later times during the day. So although some people are maybe a little skeptical of how much impact it will have, I'm very thankful that there's at least a move in the direction to accommodate. And I think it sends an important message to the truck drivers that maybe now they may drive a little more carefully, because there may be some other things that come if things don't improve. So I think that was a good first move.
And good success by those advocates in Woods Hole.
Right.
Absolutely. Mr. Suso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple comments. As we've all noted, scarecrows have begun to appear downtown as part of the Merchants' Annual Halloween seasonal observance. Certainly a fascinating thing that we observe every year in downtown Falmouth, and very welcome. Also, just to confirm, I anticipate the Planning Board will begin their review of the proposed site plan for parking and circulation involving the new senior center Gus Kenny complex at their upcoming meeting, which is tomorrow evening, Tuesday, October 17th. And as proposed, it would result in an increase of 63 parking spaces on that site to benefit all involved. And the proposal would also significantly enhance public safety access, and we're looking forward to that upcoming review. On the senior center, wanted to confirm also the request for qualifications has now been formally issued for the owner's project manager for that senior center construction project. We look forward to those responses, and we are also, as a reminder, still accepting applications for interested qualified individuals for the senior center building committee. We will be bringing those to the board at a future meeting. Also, I'm pleased to confirm, I know I noted this on Saturday, but pleased to confirm again for all involved that we have received the final approval of the Department of Environmental Protection to begin operations of the town's $46.5 million water filtration facility. Now, those operations are slated to begin yet this week, and we do look forward to that with great anticipation. As a reminder, that project is on time and within budget, in an extraordinary example of a really leadership on the part of this Board of Selectmen and previous boards, and also all those involved in the construction, and a great vote of confidence by the taxpayers of the town of Falmouth, allowing that state-of-the-art project to go forward, really setting a new standard in the Commonwealth for drinking water, not only on Cape Cod, but in the Commonwealth as well. So a project to be very proud of. So we look forward to that coming online later this week. And as a reminder also, the next meeting of this board will be Monday, October 30th. Thank you.
And didn't I also see you at the Cape Housing Institute for Upper Cape Communities, Mashpee Public Library? I think that's going to be, anyone interested in housing, tremendous opportunity on Wednesday evenings, right?
Yes. We were both in attendance at that and look forward to the version this week on Wednesday evening.
It's all the Cape communities, lots of, I think Falmouth was highest represented, lots of interest in housing. Mr. Johnson, stop.
Actually, I might just add that another bid recently advertised the skate park construction. Those construction bids are due on the 27th of this month.
Great. Good news.
Move adjournment?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services, including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their #1 goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.